Good morning. Good morning. Happy Sabbath, everybody out there, all the 12 tribes of Israel, to all the strangers that are a part of the Commonwealth of Israel. Say happy Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom, grace and peace, Shalom, mighty name of Jesus, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Thank y'all for watching. Please share the video. You can see from today's title, it's called The Signs of Israel Part 3. It's like the Lord won't let me leave this alone for this Black History Month. Think I'm turning into my teaching, because there's so much to be said, not just about who we are, but what we have done. Let me put this back here. Yeah. And and second of all, let me also say hi to everybody on all three platforms. Everybody on Facebook, everybody on Periscope, everybody on YouTube. If I start having transmission difficulties on Facebook, everybody, you guys know I'm also on Periscope and I'm on YouTube Live right now. So now back to the lesson. The Signs of Israel Part 3. This is dirty laundry. This is the stuff that don't nobody want to really talk about. We have a lot of teachers. Now, we got some teachers that talk about our dirty laundry, but we got a lot of them that don't. And again, for those that have been following me, understand that I have allergies in the morning. And just letting y'all know, as it gets warmer, they get worse. So you might hear me coughing. So like I was saying, I'm trying not to make this long. I have videos today. And we're going to watch some videos of our dirty laundry, of Israelites' dirty laundry. Let me put a disclaimer up here. I've already put it on some of the sites. The videos that I show, they're going to be for educational purposes only. They're not to try to bring in any revenue, because I will be showing videos that I have gotten from other people's sites that will hopefully humble Israelites as they go through their journey of finding out who they are and not getting puffed up and being destroyed for knowing who you are, but getting so puffed up that the Lord got to cave your chest in. You know, brothers probably know what I'm talking about. especially if you had a father or an uncle. If you didn't have your father, you probably had an uncle or some man that was in your life, hopefully. Or even if you was out on the street, you know, back in the day, a lot of brothers know about them 20 chest, them violations. You get 20 to the chest. Lord will do the same thing. You get too puffed up and high and mighty about yourself, people cave your chest in too. So that's what this lesson is going to be about. This lesson is going to be showing a lot of some of our stuff that's wrong. All right. So the first thing I want to do, and again, welcome to the Wake Up Show. I'm Brother Az K Fingers for those that's coming in. Please share the video. Happy Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom, grace and peace, mighty name of Jesus. Now let's go on and get to this lesson. Now let's go to Isaiah 28 and read verse 9 through 11. Now I like to read this all the time because there's a lot of people that don't know how we're supposed to teach, how we're supposed to learn, because God set up the Bible in such a way. He set the Bible up in such a way that his priests will read this book and they will understand this book and be able to teach it the same way they were learning. Reading from one end to the other is cool. But the Lord has, if there's a message that you think somebody might have took out right here, it's someplace else. And then you can tie it in with that righteously. All right. So let's start reading Isaiah 28, verse 9. Whom shall he teach knowledge, and whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breast. Now, who is God going to teach? He only said, Israel, out of all the families out of the earth, you the only ones I have known. That's it. There's nobody else he has taught this to. It was supposed to be taught to Israel, and Israel was supposed to live the life the Lord wanted us to live, and then go teach the rest of the nations the same thing. And we did that at one time in the days of Solomon. That actually happened. But as we started serving other gods, the blessings turned into the curses. But let's keep going. For precept must be upon precept, precept on precept, line upon line, here a little, there a little. So what you do is again, when you study to show yourself approved, you find scriptures here that'll tie into something else. And the Bible speaks for itself. Precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. So if anybody ever tells you you can't read it like that, you can only read it just like this in its context, yes, you can. You can read that in its context too, but it also has a message for something else in another spot where you could read in its context. Verse 11, for with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak unto this people. So my Hebrew brothers and sisters, there's nothing wrong with learning Hebrew. Personally, me, I don't really trust that it's all Hebrew. I believe it's Yiddish. But I do understand the Lord said here that with stammering lips and another tongue will he speak to this people. So if you want to learn, you want to go and learn Hebrew, there's nothing wrong with it. Just don't get puffed up and turn around and say you only got to learn Hebrew, or you got to speak to the Lord in Hebrew, or he won't hear you. I always ask this same question to the people that say that. Men began to call on the name of the Lord right after Seth was born and he started having his children. What language were they speaking? It was only one language, and you can't say it was Hebrew. That's just something I like to ask all the time. Men called on the name of the Lord, and no one knows what that language was. So when the Lord split the languages up, he knows what his name is in every language. Don't let nobody, Israel, try to turn you away from the Lord with that letter J stuff. Okay? All right. Let's go to Isaiah 8. But I have added in Isaiah 8 I've also added Isaiah 8 and 16. So we're going to read Isaiah 8 and 16, then go to verse 20. Bind up the testimony. Seal the law among my disciples. So for those that want to always say the law is done away with, this is actually God speaking through Isaiah. Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples, not Isaiah's disciples, God's disciples. But what did Isaiah say too in verse 20? To the law and to the testimony. If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them. No light whatsoever. So if anybody ever asks you or tells you you don't have to keep the law anymore, that's not what it just said in Isaiah. And we're going to read something too. I'm going to add in here in Acts 24. Let's go to Acts 24, read this real quick, and then we'll get into our dirty laundry. Acts 24, verse 14. This is when Paul was being accused of not teaching the law, teaching against the law. So this may brighten up some people's minds about, well, Paul might have been teaching against the law. No, he was teaching against the animal sacrifice law. But let's see what Paul said right here when he was on trial. Acts 24, verse 14. But this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. This is Apostle Paul speaking. So for those that want to continue to read Paul's letters that he wrote to people he already taught, who understood his letters, you need to probably go and reevaluate your doctrine, because here Paul said again, Acts 24:14, while he was on trial, but this I confess unto thee, that after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? Believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Now that's Apostle Paul. Let's get into our dirty laundry now. Oh, almost forgot about that. Almost forgot about that. 1 John. I did forget to write it down. Oh, excuse me. 1 John. All right. Verse 4. He that saith I know him and keepeth not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. So we teach here a little, there a little, by the law and the testimony. Even Apostle Paul said, I believe in the law and the prophets, and he gave a testimony. And right here, it's being said again, he that saith I know him and keepeth not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. He is a false prophet. Okay? Looking for all these answers? They're in this book. And y'all excuse me because I got a new laptop. Don't know how to deal with this. So while I'm reading, it might shut down. I'll try to bring it back up again. And again, I apologize for the resolution on my TV. Now, let me see. Should I cut the... Well, nah. Just leave it like it is. Let's get back. Let's get into this because the scriptures are going to speak what I'm trying to convey anyway. Let's go to Jeremiah. Jeremiah 2. So we're going to talk about Israel's dirty laundry, which some of Israelites may not even want to listen to. So in part 1, the Lord showed through his book who Israel is. Slavery and all of that stuff. In part 2, the blessings and the curses challenge is something that I issued because we have a lot of people out here that some Israelites might not know about that are starting a quote unquote movement against the people who call themselves Israelites. I understand why they do it, because they ran into our other brothers who are mad and angry. And now they have turned mad and angry, and they have come against the truth of God according to this book. And so in that challenge, which was part 2, I was just letting everybody know, if you say it's not us, then you have to prove that it's the other people that's in the land with the Bible only, because that's the way we were all awakened, with the Bible only. And the biggest key was Deuteronomy 28. But I also had to throw in Leviticus 26. And in the challenge, in part 2, it says that you have to show the signs of Israel according to the blessings and the curses, because they were only put on one nation forever. Whether if they did good, then they got the blessings. If they did bad, then they got the curses. And that's only happened to one people. Every blessing, every curse. So now here in part 3, we're going to be showing some stuff that Israel did that made us get a part of the curses. Because for Black History Month, or this whole time people are learning about themselves. Yeah, you get proud, you get puffed up and stuff, but then we go after other people. And the thing is, you got to be humble, because you are dirty as well. Maybe even dirtier in the Lord's eyes. And some Israelites don't want to see that. So let's go ahead and start at verse 1. Jeremiah 2, verse 1. You can read the whole chapter yourself. I'm going to be skipping and dipping. All right. Jeremiah 2, verse 1. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Go and cry in the ears of them, in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I remember thee, the kindness of thy youth, the love of thy espousals, which means betrothals, when thou wentest after me in the wilderness, in the land that was not sown. Israel was holiness unto the Lord, and the first fruits of his increase. All that devoured him shall offend. Evil shall come upon them, saith the Lord. Hear ye the word of the Lord, O house of Jacob, and all the families of the house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, What iniquity have your fathers found in me, that they are gone far from me, and have walked after vanity, and are become vain? Neither, say they, where is the Lord that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, and led us into the wilderness, through a land of deserts and of pits, through a land of drought, of the shadow of death, through the land that no man passed through, and where no man dwelt? Where are the fathers that experienced all of this stuff, and now they don't want to talk about them? They don't want to deal with them no more, because they done got puffed up. Where are they at? And I brought you into verse 7, and I brought you into a plentiful country, to eat the fruit thereof and the goodness thereof. But when ye entered, ye defiled my land. Not your land, Israel. He said, ye defiled my land. How is that the Lord's land? Because in the long run, the Lord is going to dwell there and be king and rule over everybody in that land and around the world. But that's his habitation, where he wishes to dwell. And that's why he's calling it, ye defiled my land, and made mine heritage an abomination. Verse 8, the priests said not, where is the Lord? And they that handled the law knew me not. The pastors also transgressed against me, and the prophets prophesied by Baal, and walked after the things that do not profit. So the pastors, our priests, they walked after and prophesied by Baal. Baal is Nimrod, which is really Satan. Oh, wait a minute. Israel, we was worshiping another God? That's what the Lord is saying here. That's exactly what he's saying right here. Let's skip down to verse 14. Is Israel a servant? Is he homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? Verse 19. Thine own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backslidings shall reprove thee. Thy own wickedness. So whatever Israel has done is going to come back on Israel to correct them. Oh, my brothers and sisters, that's mad and angry at the white man and at the Ishmaelite and at the Hamite and at anybody else who's not Israel. You are the one that did whatever has come to you first. What thus saith the Lord? Let's read verse 19 again. Jeremiah 2:19. Thine own wickedness shall correct thee. Thy own wickedness shall correct thee, and thy backsliding shall reprove thee. Know therefore and see that it is an evil thing and bitter, that thou hast forsaken the Lord thy God, and that my fear is not in thee. The fear is not in, yeah, the fear of the Lord. Israel's not afraid of the Lord no more. They be like, man, we doing this by ourselves, man. Man, you know what I'm saying? Can't nobody tell me nothing. Saith the Lord God of hosts. Verse 20. For of old time I have broken thy yoke and burst thy bands. And thou saidest, I will not transgress. So he's the one that threw curses on us. And we turn around and say, oh, I ain't going to do it no more. Just like when you whooping your child, you told your child not to do something. And you all up in that behind with that belt. And they ain't going to do it no more. I swear I ain't going to do it no more. I ain't going to do it no more. When upon every high hill and every green tree thou wanderest, playing the harlot. Oh, we playing the harlot now, huh? We not playing the wife, we playing the hoe. Verse 21. Yet I planted thee a noble vine, wholly a right seed. How then art thou turned into a degenerate plant of a strange vine unto me? How did you turn into this? Skip down to verse 28. No, verse 26. I'm sorry. Verse 26. As a thief is ashamed when he is found, so is the house of Israel ashamed. They, their kings, their princes, and their priests, and their prophets. Skip down to verse 28. But where are thy gods that thou hast made thee? Let them arise, if they can save thee in the time of trouble. For according to the number of the cities of thy gods, O Judah, wherefore will ye plead with me? Ye all have transgressed against me, saith the Lord. He's specifically talking to Israel. He's telling Israel, you have done these things. Everything that's being done to you, you have done. And now you sitting here pleading with me? Verse 29 again. Wherefore will ye plead with me? Ye have all have transgressed against me, saith the Lord. In vain have I smitten your children. They receive no correction. Your own sword hath devoured your prophets like a destroying lion. O generation, see ye the word of the Lord. I have been a witness unto Israel. Have I been a wilderness unto Israel, a land of darkness? Wherefore say my people, we are lords. We will come no more unto thee. Is that what has happened? We became lords ourselves. We made ourselves a God. And we sit up here and say, we ain't coming to you no more. This is Israel. This is the people that everyone is wanting to be. But a lot of people don't want them curses. Yep, there you go. It's coming back up. All right. Verse 32, can a maid forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number. Why trimmest thou thy way? Why trimmest thou thy way to seek love? Therefore hast thou also taught the wicked ones thy ways. So everything that has been happening to us, we did to either other people or to ourselves too. But yet and still, our main goal is to be mad at another people and say that you're wicked. But the Lord just say, you taught the wicked ones their ways. But Israel don't want to deal with that. If you're going to teach history about Israel, teach it all. Don't just go out here on these streets and say, you Israel, because these curses happen to you and they don't. No, go out there and teach them the rest. Teach them that we are wicked people too. Maybe more wicked than the other people that you want to call wicked. Verse 34, also in thy skirts is found the blood of the souls of her poor innocents. I have not found it by secret search, but upon all these, yet thou sayest, because I am innocent, surely his anger shall turn from me. There's a lot of Israelites saying, oh, just because I'm Israel and these things were done to me, I'm innocent. Surely he'll turn away his anger from me. Behold, I will plead with thee, because thou sayest, I have not sinned. And that's the biggest problem when it comes to Israel. We love to tell everybody who we are, but a lot of us, I'm not going to say the majority, I'm going to give it a half and half thing, don't want to acknowledge the bad part, the bad side. We just want to acknowledge the bad side when it comes to everybody else, but we don't want to acknowledge the bad side when it comes to ourselves. And that's a problem, because that's the Lord has told us. He said, listen, when you confess the sins of yourself, confess the sins of your fathers too. And then he will hear. Let me blow this up. I usually have everything blowed up, but like I said, I got this new computer. I'm trying to figure it out myself. Let's go to Hosea 4. And let's read these two verses. Let's read these two verses. Hosea 4 and verse 6. Everybody loves to use this verse as a cliche, right? But they don't read the whole entire verse or the verse under there. So let's read it. My people, who is the Lord talking about? He's talking about Israel. He's not talking about no other nation. He's talking about Israel. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, not because they don't have a good education. It's good to go get a good education to try to survive in this captivity. I'm not going to knock that. But this ain't the lack of knowledge that the Lord is talking about. Let's keep reading. Let's start it again. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt not be no priest unto me, seeing that thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. And I will also forget thy children, because we sat up and did not want to do the law no more. We wanted to do what we wanted to do. We wanted to eat what we wanted to eat. The Lord is like, I'm going to forget your children. And that's why in parts 1 and 2 of the series now showed how all the curses came upon us. and how the Lord forgot our children. And still to this very day, same thing. Verse 7, as they were increased, so they sinned against me. Therefore, I will change their glory into shame. Therefore, I will change their glory into shame. We the most shameful people on this planet. We telling people who we are, and they still be like, so? You dirty nigga. Ain't nothing changed. It's a shame on us now. We had a glory at one time, but now we got shame. Why do we have shame? Let's go to Exodus 20. This is why we have shame, man. Let's go back to Exodus 20. He said again, because seeing that thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. Let's go read the law of thy God. Exodus 20 and verse 1. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. That's the first commandment, right? Isn't that also the first law that people like to say? Well, you know, Jesus only came with 2 laws. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul. Well, then Jesus was referring back to this. He didn't override his father's commandments. He told you flat out, I don't speak the words that I speak, and I don't come in my own doctrine. I come in my Father's doctrine. So when he gave that first commandment, he was given the very first thing that the Lord said he did not want any of Israel to do. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. And that commandment applies to the rest of the world as well. Because he wanted Israel to do this first. And then everybody would have saw the blessings that was going on. And they all would have done what Israel was doing. All you got to do is go read about King Solomon. He did all that stuff. And all the nations came to him for wisdom. Because they wanted to be blessed as well. But when King Solomon turned and started worshiping other gods, it was over with. But that's the first thing the Lord said. He will forget your children because you forgot his law. And what's the very first commandment that's very important to the Lord? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. None. And this is what we do. We have other gods before him. And a lot of these things that's going on, we have been tricked into believing they have something to do with God, and they don't. Everything you see on the right hand of your screen, and there's more too, they all serve other gods. The thing is, you have to go and do some research. I got a series that I've been doing called All Roads Lead to Babylon. And in the series, I get each and every individual holiday and show how it is serving and worshiping another God, and God does not like it. This is why we are still in captivity. This is why the world is still messed up the way it is. Because nobody's doing actually what God said. Everything on the left hand of the screen is what God said to do. So if anyone's going to run to what Jesus said, love the Lord thy God with all your heart and all your soul, and then Jesus was referring back here to the law, which says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. That whole right side is breaking the law, and God ain't happy about it. But that's what we have been going through. And because we've been doing these things, we have sat up and got pushed into captivity. The very thing that the Lord warned us about in Leviticus 26 in Deuteronomy 28, if you keep my commandments, all these blessings will happen. If you don't keep my commandments, all these curses will happen. And this is why this is happening. Because of us. No other people. Not the white man. Not the Chinese, Asian people. It's all our own fault. And that's why this happened. This is why this happened. Let's go to Deuteronomy 28 and read the verse that people like to try to make fun of. But, you know, some of these cats, man, they getting ready to, they're putting themselves in the fire and don't even know it. Leviticus 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. The Lord was not talking about literal Egypt. When you look at the monuments that's around the world, there's plenty monuments that resemble or are exact replications of what was going on in Egypt. You have the same, I forgot what that big tall pillar is that's in Egypt. You have it in America. You have it in Europe. You have it in Asia. You have it in South America. You have the same thing when it comes to the pyramids. Why? Because all the families of the earth at one time were in one place and they all spoke one language. And Baal, who is Nimrod, and his wife Semiramis were the ones who started every custom that we consider pagan that goes against God. So when the Lord came down and they confounded the languages and broke them up, and all these people went in different directions as different nations, they took the same customs with them. Babylon, all over the earth, not just one place, but the Egyptians, they started building these gigantic pyramids, and everybody else did. They made some small pyramids too. I showed that in one of my videos. But the worshiping of other gods and the customs, Egypt was the center of the world. The Egyptians were the ones who ruled everything, and everybody learned even more from them. And it still goes on today. So when the Lord says, the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, he's not talking about Egypt, the land of Egypt, even though some of us were. Some of us ran through Egypt trying to get away. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. Thou shalt not see the land of the land of Israel again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies, bondmen and bondwomen, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies as slaves. And no man shall buy you. No man shall buy you out of the situation. It was a custom in Israel. If somebody was a slave, again, there was a difference between the word slave and servant. So if someone was a servant because they were trying to get rid of a debt, someone else could come over and say, hey, I want to pay that debt off. And now you in service to that person, or they set you free. Nobody has done this. That's why it says, and no man shall buy you. No one's going to buy you out of this curse, because the Lord said, if you don't keep my commandments, I'm going to sell you around the world in ships. Go up to 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other. And there ye shall serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So not only has he sailed us around the world in cargo ships, and as we can see from this Atlantic slave trade, 1518, even though I've shown in another video, is in America, it started in 1502, not 1619, people. That's a false doctrine getting put out here for people to get a false hope when next year comes, and then the next year after that comes. And there's going to be people that's going to fall away from the truth because they believe these Israelites that were saying, see, we were going to go home in 1619 and 1620, and we didn't. I told you they were some false prophets. That's why I keep specifying and trying to get people to understand 400 years was only in Egypt. If they continue to read the verse, it tells you the fourth generation was going to come back to the land and get rid of the Ammonites. There are no more Anamites. So you know why? Because we got rid of them 4 generations after we came out of Egypt. It's that simple. Some people just don't read, man. They don't keep reading. But again, the cargo ships, this is a part of the curse. So we're going to read. We're going to watch this video. All right. Let me make sure. I hope my volume is up enough. So we're going to watch this video here. And y'all pay attention. And again, all of the videos that I'm about to show, I'm putting a disclaimer again, is for educational purposes only. I am not receiving any type of funds for what I'm showing. All right. Let's go ahead and watch.
What do you think of when you hear the words slave trade? You probably think of the Atlantic slave trade. While this is one of the most well-known, there were, and still are, numerous other trades. Today, we're going to take a look at all of the different trades throughout history, with a focus on the Atlantic trade. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 shocking facts about slave trade. One of the first mentions of slavery was in the Mesopotamian Code of Hammurabi, circa 1860 BC. It's worth noting that besides not having a written language, slavery wasn't too popular with hunter-gatherers because it required social stratification.
Now, let's go to Genesis 37 real quick. Let's go to Genesis 37. Before we get into the rest of the video, let's go to Genesis 37. Genesis 37, we're going to start reading. You know what? I'm ahead of myself. Let's finish watching the video, but everybody go to Genesis 37.
4. Since the beginning of civilization, post-hunter-gatherers, slavery has played a huge role in society, from the building of the pyramids in Egypt to indentured servitude in England. In fact, at the turn of the 19th century, an estimated 3/4 of the world was trapped in bondage against their will, some form of slavery or serfdom. 23. The first large-scale slave trade was the Arab slave trade. It started in the 7th century and primarily involved slaves being taken from Western Africa to the Arabian Peninsula. Some historians have cited the Arab slave trade as possibly being the initial source of prejudice against darker-skinned sub-Saharan Africans that has unfortunately continued into the 21st century.
Now let's go to Genesis 37. That's where I really wanted to stop it at. Now you saw it said the Arabs. All right. The Arabs have been doing slave trade way before Africa. And the first time Israel got dirty. One of the first times Israel got dirty. Let's read Genesis 37, verse 18. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. Well, who is him? This is Joseph. This is Joseph. Jacob's other sons did not like Joseph. They thought that, he was being what you would call spoiled, our days spoiled. And daddy loved him more than he loved us. And they got jealous and all of that stuff. And they out in the field working while Joseph get to stay at the crib and learn things. So when he's on his way out to go see them after his father told him to go check on them, this is what they said. Verse 19, and they said one to another, behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, let us slay him. Whoa. They were that jealous. They wanted to kill their brother and cast him into some pit. And we will say some evil beast devoured him, and we shall see that will become of his dreams. So they're ready to kill. They're ready to lie. This is Israel. This is our dirty laundry. And Reuben heard it. And he delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into the pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come into his brethren, that they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into the pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels, bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down into Egypt. So we got Ishmaelites on their way to Israel. Into Egypt, right? Verse 26. And Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it we slay our brother and conceal his blood? They're like, what type of money can we get from killing him? Again, this is our forefathers, people. They're ready to kill because they're jealous. One says, no, let's not shed no blood, but let's sell him and we can make a profit off of it. This is Israel, man. Come, verse 27, come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, to the Arabs. And let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh, and his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianite merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. So our forefathers, who was dirty, they didn't kill their brother, but they sold him for 20 pieces of silver to the Ishmaelites going into Egypt. This is how far back the Ishmaelites have been having slave trades. Let's keep watching this film.
2. When most people consider the phrase slave trade, they're thinking of the Atlantic slave trade. This slave trade started during the 15th century and continued until the 19th century. 21. As with the Arab slave trade, the source of slaves was, once again, sub-Saharan Africa. The Europeans essentially tapped into an already developed slave trade and exploited it for their own purposes. 20. The Portuguese were the first to enter the Atlantic slave trade in the 16th century. For the next 4 centuries, they would remain the primary actors. In fact, by the time it was abolished in the 19th century, nearly half of all slaves traded in the Atlantic slave trade had been shipped to Portuguese colonies like Brazil. 19. Although most people think of the slave trade as being British ships taking slaves from West Africa to the US, this only accounted for a little over 6% of all slaves. The vast majority, roughly 60%, were sent to Spanish and Portuguese South America.
You heard that now, right? 6% of the slaves brought out of Africa, which was Israel, were being brought to the North America. But the majority was being sent to South America and the Caribbean. The majority. By who? The Spanish and the Portuguese. And why? Because the Spanish and the Portuguese for years kept trying to keep England out of it, and the Dutch out of the slave trade.
18. Most of the remaining slaves, about 30%, were taken to the Caribbean by the British, French, and Dutch empires. 17. This trade wasn't just back and forth, though. It was something called triangle trade. And, as you could guess, triangular trade is any trade that involves 3 separate regions. In this instance, the slaves were taken from West Africa in exchange for cash crops in the Caribbean. The cash crops were exchanged for manufactured goods in New England, and then the manufactured goods were once again exchanged for slaves in West Africa.
So everybody was making money off of Israel, except Israel.
16. Although the British North American colonies were not a major destination region for slaves, apart from the plantations in the South, the colonies benefited massively from selling their manufactured goods to slave traders. 15. Historians estimate that approximately 12 million African slaves entered the Atlantic trade between the 16th and 19th centuries.
Y'all take a good look at that map. See, the majority of us, of our brothers and sisters, are in South America. Now, we're all over the world, like the Lord said. He scattered us. If you look at the east coast of Africa, we were sent to India. We were sent all the way around the world. Listen, there's a part where the Chinese even got in on the slave trade. Let's watch the rest of this.
About 1.5 million died on the ships during transport, and 10.5 million were sold into slavery, mostly in the Caribbean. Another 6 million were sold to Asian slave traders, and yet another 8 million were destined for slave markets on the continent of Africa itself. 14. About 4 million more slaves died during forced marches to the coasts of Africa. Since Europeans typically were afraid to venture too far inland due to disease, slaves were brought to the coasts to be sold by slave traders or opposing tribes.
Now, I want you to remember that. Because it just said what I've been saying for years. The Europeans did not go into the interior of Africa and take anything. You know, we were stolen off of our land and all of that. They didn't go in and get you. Somebody else did. And you did too. And we're going to keep reading. Keep watching the film.
13. With the arrival of European slave ships, criminals and prisoners of war were typically sold to the Europeans for money rather than being punished as they used to be.
So, criminals, people that was breaking the law within Israel, were sold, and people who had debt. Let's keep going.
12. Once at the coast, slaves were held in large forts called factories. Out of the 20 million slaves who passed through the factory doors, historians estimate that roughly 4% died there, about 820,000 people. 11. Slave ship captains packed anywhere between 350 to 600 people onto their boats. The quarters were so cramped that the victims could barely move on the 2-month voyage across the Atlantic. Many died of disease because they slept in their urine and feces. Others committed suicide by escaping and jumping overboard. Even sailors didn't like working on the slave ships, and many died of disease. This was good for profits, however, as the ship captains had fewer people to pay. 10. Upon arrival in the Americas, usually the Caribbean, slaves were held at seasoning camps. Dysentery was the leading cause of death here, and nearly 5 million slaves died in these camps.
Now, before they brought us here to America, we were brought to the Caribbean. We were brought to all of the islands around there, and those was slaves, like I said there, seasoning camps, which I used to call conditioning camps. Before they brought you here. Why did they do that at first? Because in a book called Black Indians, the Spanish had already tried to bring slaves to America first, but they kept running away. They kept getting with the Native Americans, not their brothers. And they would turn around and fight against the Spanish and the Portuguese, or really the Spanish. So they decided we're going to take them to the islands, because if they run off, there's nowhere else for them to run. They're not going to jump in. If they may jump in the ocean and swim, but then they'll get eaten by the sharks. Then they were brought to to what we now call United States.
9. Sugar plantations were the reason for about 84% of slaves being brought to the New World. The vast majority would end up in Brazil. 8. Britain's triangle trade between its colonies, however, was the most profitable of the Atlantic slave trades. This led to Britain becoming a massive consumer of sugar. It's estimated that nearly 1 out of every 20 pounds in circulation during the start of the Industrial Revolution was derived from the slave trade.
Now, I saw that before on another documentary. A lot of us believe it was cotton. It was sugar. Because now sugar, as we even know now to this day, is really a drug. Sugar tastes good and it stimulates you, but it's also it's an addictive thing. So now, what was the biggest commodity to be transported? Sugar. That's why the majority of Israel was sent to Brazil. Yeah, there was some us that were brought here over cotton and tobacco and some sugar plantations too. But the majority of everything was in Brazil. But you just saw the British were the ones making the most money off of it. But these are things that happen to us. Let's keep reading. I'm gonna keep watching.
7. So why were Europeans buying African slaves and not vice versa? To make a long story short, it came down to one thing: technology. Although it would have been cheaper to enslave other Europeans, advances in shipbuilding technology made it possible to enter an existing market on another continent. 6. Plantations in the American South, usually less than 100 slaves, were dwarfed in size compared to plantations in the Caribbean and South America, usually more than 100 slaves. This led to high rates of disease in the larger plantations of South America. Death rates in the Caribbean and Brazil were so high and birth rates were so low that slaves couldn't be replaced without a constant flow from Africa. In the US, slaves had a fertility rate that was nearly 80% higher. 5.
Now, if you peep that, we all know when we were in slavery in the land of Goshen, in the land of Goshen and in Egypt, we multiplied like crazy, right? However, we had diseases among us. Isn't that a part of the curses? The reason they kept the population of plantations down to, like they said, 100 is because in the South, it could have been thousands on one. And diseases was killing everybody else, so they got to go get more. The English and the Dutch got smart and was like, look, we just gonna limit it. And we can keep longer.
By 1825, the high fertility rate among slaves in the U.S. led to nearly 1/4 of all black people in the New World living in the United States. 4. This also meant that by the 1800s, most slaves in the U.S. were much farther removed from their African roots than those in the Caribbean and South America. While slaves in the U.S. were 3rd, 4th, and 5th generation Americans, most slaves in the Caribbean and South America had been born in Africa. 3. Both British Parliament and U.S. Congress outlawed the importation of slaves in 1807. While Britain pressured other countries to end their slave trades as well, the internal slave trade of the American South continued until the end of the Civil War in 1865. This finally abolished slavery within the U.S. 2. Although American slaves were meant to be free, Jim Crow laws and segregation prevented blacks from owning homes, being employed, and getting an education. It wasn't until November 2000 that Alabama finally became the last state to overturn its ban on interracial marriage. Although the U.S. Supreme Court had prevented Alabama from enforcing its law, the ban remained on books. 1. Although every single government on Earth has officially banned slavery, it still remains a huge problem. There are actually more slaves in the world today than ever before. But
did you hear that? There are more slaves in the world today than ever before. See, over here in the United States, you know what happens over here? We get what we call local news. We don't watch world news. So and then we get bombarded with things to distract us, like movies and television and music. And we have no clue what's going on the outside of the United States. No clue.
By some estimates, up to 50 million people live in modern-day bondage. Most of these slaves are in southern Asia, over 20 million, but the rest of Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa, and the Middle East all have high levels of slavery as well.
And most of them are Israel, because the Lord said, I'm going to scatter you. Just because we're living in so-called 2018 does not mean it's done, that it's over with. It doesn't mean that at all. But a lot of our brothers and sisters don't look at that at all. Let's go to another video. Now, this is a brother. Glad I finally found this video. This is a brother who teaches. Let me move it back a little bit. All right. This brother here. Now I'm playing his video for a reason. His name is Akwiti Emma. I never could say his name right. Now this dude knows what's going on in Africa. All right. And I apologize again for the resolution. It's not playing some things. But I want y'all to listen real closely at what he witnesses and then what he says. All right. And again, the video is going to show one of our camps that's very hateful towards the rest of everybody that's outside of Israel. And that's what they do. And I'm not promoting them at all. But I want y'all to get the message that this brother shows us. All right, here we go.
To watch and then comment on. We're going to play.
Hold on. Let me turn it up some more. Here we go.
Someone sent me a YouTube video to watch and then comment on. We're going to play 3 minutes of this video, and then I gave my comments on the information that is being shared. Let's watch the video.
You Africans got some damn nerve, man. The Israelite school at UPK been teaching the truth since 1969, and I'm going to show you today. Get me in Joel, where they said they sold us to the Greeks. Joel chapter 3, man. I'm going to show you all this article right here. You hold on. Read this article here for me, huh? Yeah, I'm going to show you where you're going to start to read from. Hold this like this. You're going to read from right here. The House of Representatives. You see it? No sweat. Let's do this. The House of Representatives. Right here. Right here. The House. This is an article that a brother wrote documenting that the Africans are apologizing for their role in slavery to the blacks in America. What is that telling you? That they sold us to the white man. You all been gamed up thinking we African, and some white man went to Africa and stole us. That's a damn lie. The Ghanaians, the Nigerians, the Senegalese, the Cameroonians, them damn filthy Ethiopians sold blacks, Hispanics, Native Indians to the white man in slavery, man. Read.
Many West African nations and tribes have issued apologies for their role in the transatlantic slave trade.
Read that again for all you Pan-African, I'm Africa, oh Mama Africa people, man, that think you some damn African. The Africans sold you into slavery, and right now they are apologizing for their role. Read it again.
Many West African nations and tribes have issued apologies.
Have issued what?
Apologies.
Have issued what?
Apologies.
You're only going to apologize if you do something wrong. And what them Africans did to black people was wrong. Was 400 years of a crime that they benefited. They got paid for each black man they sold into slavery. And you gonna come up here and tell me about Christ Rastafari? Damn the Ethiopians, man. Damn you Africans. And you are going to sell slavery of a black man called Jesus Christ. Read.
Hey,
right?
In 1989, President of Benin, a neighbor of Nigeria, apologized for his nation's role in slavery.
Yo, then you will never hear that. The American government will never put that on CNN. T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar and Louis Farrakhan ain't gonna never tell you that the Africans sold you into
It's
slavery.
very heartbreaking when I see brothers from these camps behave this way. They are repeating the same errors our ancestors made, which contributed to the transatlantic slave trade. The brother in the video read an article which stated that the leaders in some tribes in Ghana and Benin apologized for their role in the transatlantic slave trade. This is true, but we have to pause to find out why they apologized.
Now, what I want you guys to do is to pay very close attention to what this brother is about to say. Okay? Pay very close attention to what he's about to say. Because as we just saw from that group who's mad and angry, and it's always a surprise to me, why are you like that if you're reading the same Bible that I'm reading and trying and understanding that all of this happened to us because of us? Why are you mad at everybody else when you can read in the book that the Lord has used other people to go upside our head? It makes no sense to me why my brothers and sisters are so angry at everybody else. But I want you guys to closely pay attention, because when the other brother was up there, he read off some other nations, and now he's going to explain something. So let's check it out.
Behind this apology, you have misinformed statements and wrong conclusions.
Let me roll it
Drawn
back
by the We the living vow to uphold this. There is a sign posted at the Cape Coast in Elmina Castle.
The Cameroonians, the transatlantic, apologize if you do something wrong. Pray for each man called Jesus Christ. Read.
In 1989, President of Benin, a neighbor of Nigeria, apologized for his nation's role in slavery.
Yo, then you will never hear that. The American government will never put that on CNN. T.D. Jakes and Creflo Dollar and Louis Farrakhan ain't gonna never tell you that the Africans sold you into
It's
slavery.
very heartbreaking when I see brothers from these camps behave this way. They are repeating the same errors our ancestors made, which contributed to the transatlantic slave trade. The brother in the video read an article which stated that the leaders in some tribes in Ghana and Benin apologized for their role in the transatlantic slave trade. This is true, but we have to pause to find out why they apologized. There is a sign posted at the Cape Coast in Elmina Castle from the chiefs and leaders in Ghana that reads, "In everlasting memory to the anguish of our ancestors, may those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their root. May humanity never again perpetuate such injustice against humanity. We the living vow to uphold this." Because of not knowing the real details behind this apology, you have misinformed statements and wrong conclusions drawn by the author of the article that the brother in the video was reading. We have to be careful. We cannot read materials from Google and run off with it. The bare bones information we know of the transatlantic slave trade is that, number one, some African people sold fellow Africans to non-Africans for personal gains. This is false. Hamitic Africans did not sell fellow Hamitic Africans into slavery. Or did they sell their family members into slavery, like it was portrayed in the opening scene in the film Amistad?
Now, what the brother is saying those that know the difference between the Negroes and the Hamites, Hamitic Africans did not sell Hamitic Africans into slavery, or did they sell their family members into slavery? So the Hamitic Africans, the ones that came out of Ham, never sold their own people. Let's keep going.
Where a family sold a fellow family member into slavery. That is complete falsehood. Nowhere in African history did Hamitic Africans sell family or relatives into slavery. Number two, some Hamitic Africans sold Negroes or Hebrews for personal gains. This is half truth. It is not only Hamitic Africans, but also Negroes, Hebrews, also sold fellow Negroes or Hebrews into slavery as well.
Did you hear that, people? This is something that is like really hush hush, but it's a part of our dirty laundry. Africans never, the Hamitic Africans never sold their own people. They sold Negroes. But Negroes also sold Negroes. But nobody want to talk about that part. Let's keep going.
Therefore, the correct statement about the transatlantic slave trade should then be Hamitic Africans and some Hebrews sold Hebrews to non-Africans for personal gains. Or Africans and some Hebrews sold Hebrews to non-Africans for personal gains. Or we can word it further. Africans and some Negroes sold Negroes to non-Africans for personal gain.
So, what we have now is the Hamitic. Again, the Lord said, I'm going to scatter you, right? But a lot of us have been taught for a long time that the Africans came and got us, took us to the coast, and sold us to the Europeans and to the Arabs. But there was Hamitic Africans who did do that. They never sold their own people. But there was Hebrews that were doing it too. There were Hebrews that were also selling Negroes to those Hamitic Africans, to the Gentiles, and to the Ishmaelites as well, because they didn't want to be sold. This is our dirty laundry.
My point is, Hebrews also sold fellow Hebrews as slaves for personal gain. This is fact. The strip of land in West Africa that was once called the Slave Coast stretched from the Volta River in Ghana through Togo, modern-day Benin, which was called Dahomey, and Nigeria.
Now, that is what's all called Negro land. I showed you in another video that we ran past when we left in 70 AD from the Romans. We fled and went past the Hamites and went to the land which is called Negro land, the Sub-Sahara. Some other ones ran through Saudi Arabia Peninsula and crossed the Horn of Africa and came into South Africa. But what we're going to talk about right here, what he's going to talk about, is what is now called the Slave Coast. And all these countries are there. But listen to who he says helped all of this stuff happen when it comes to selling slaves.
4 countries that now occupy this stretch of land was one territory before the Europeans divided the African continent to define their trade zones in 1844. The result is the current Africa as most people know it today. However, Evenigba, Hebrew land, was the name of this strip of land that now houses these 4 countries. The people that occupied this stretch of land were called Eves, Hebrews, or Eveville, Hebrew people. Because my brother mentioned Benin, let us focus on Benin.
Here we go.
Let us focus on Dahomey. The people of Dahomey are from the tribe of Dan, modern-day Benin. An in-depth knowledge of their oral history, knowledge of their culture and tradition compares to information in the Torah. Their landmarks and city names agree with similar names in the Torah as well. The name Dahomey is actually a compound name. Da is the name of their ancestor and Home means home. When you put together, you get the home of Dan.
Now, if those don't know what a compound word is when you take two words and put them together and make it a one word. So he's about to explain. The first part is the tribe of Dan. Who is the tribe of Dan? Israel.
Specifically, the home of the tribe of Dan. When you watch my video on the 12 tribes chart, you will get more information about the tribe of Dan. The link is going to be in the description box.
Now, he's not talking about the 12 tribes chart that the brothers in New York developed. All right? So let's not get confused with that. Let's keep going.
Those camps who shout on these streets, we are Hebrew Israelites and not Africans. The Africans sold us into slavery and we have no relationship with them. For your information, the majority of the victims of the transatlantic slave trade met their fate at the hands of fellow Hebrews. Hebrew on Hebrew crime.
Black on black crime? Are you serious? Black on black crime? And you know why I believe this? Because we still do it to this day. The curses say your eye will be evil towards your brother. We wild in the streets in Isaiah 51 verse 20, right? On the corners killing each other. Hebrew on Hebrew crime. That ain't nothing new. Ain't nothing new under the sun. Let's keep going.
Do not be surprised. Do not think it's unheard of. We have the same atrocity documented in the Torah when Joseph was sold by his own brothers. This was repeated again when Hebrews in Africa sold their brothers as slaves to the West. And now we have some Hebrew Israelites from these camps in the West repeating the same atrocity, shouting, damn the Nigerians, damn Ghanaians, damn the Benins, not realizing they're damning their own Hebrew brothers.
Yes, sir.
Don't forget, the majority of the Hebrews are in Africa, and our ancestors played a big role in selling fellow Hebrews into captivity. Take time and do a research on the kingdom of Dahomey, and you will find out they were one of the big players in the capture and enslaving of many of their neighbors. Dahomey is a member of the 12 tribes, playing a major role in the selling of fellow Hebrews into slavery.
The tribe of Dan was selling other tribes to the English, to the Gentiles, to the Africans, to sell to the Gentiles, or to the Ishmaelites, the Arabs. Yeah, this is some dirty laundry don't nobody want to look at. Our own Hebrew brothers was selling us off. Now, I'm not putting this out here for people to get mad and say, see, even our own brothers. That's not it. This stuff is to humble. Understand what we read earlier. The Lord said your own transgressions are going to correct you. Let's keep it moving.
It is not only the tribe of Dan who did this. Other groups in the Congo also did this.
Everybody had a choice.
So you want someone to blame. You want someone to damn. I suggest we look closer to home.
Yes, sir.
This is why the leaders of these Hebrew tribes apologized. They are Hebrews because they are aware of the history. They now realize their ancestors had sold their own brothers and sisters into slavery.
Understand, when the other brother was up there talking about they wrote this letter and they was apologizing, what he just said is because our own brothers realized that their ancestors, which is still our ancestors, committed a horrible crime. And they're apologizing for it. Why? Because they recognize the sins of their fathers and they're repenting for it. Why can't you?
When a man points a finger at someone else to blame them, he should remember that 3 of his fingers are pointing back at himself.
I love that video. So he was talking.
Those who died rest.
Now remember, he just got finished talking about. One of the slave ports has an apology. He's also talking about how the leaders of that part of Africa were apologizing for their role in slavery, and they're Hebrews themselves. They're not Hamites. Let's watch some other videos.
May those who died rest in peace. May those who return find their roots. May humanity never again perpetrate such injustice against humanity, and we, the living, vow to uphold this. Slave exit to waiting boat. As we walk out the castle, we all carry a lot of responsibilities. We are just going to preach against injustice. And from now onwards, we see ourselves as brothers. This flag was brought by the National House of Chiefs as a mission statement of the whole tour of the castle.
What role did they kind of play in keeping this slave trade going?
The chiefs were there, and then this slavery stuff was going on. Mm-hmm. So people are of the view that some of the chiefs also participated.
Mm-hmm.
So the chiefs, this is amongst Israel in Africa that fled from Jerusalem. The people that we put us over us as kings was selling us off. They were selling us off.
Yeah, so that is why they brought this to show us like apology,
right,
of what some of.
That's why they wrote that apology.
Also, did, yeah.
That's why those people over there, which is our brothers and sisters, wrote that apology. That's exactly why they did that. Because they understood who we are. And they understood what their forefathers had done, which was just as wrong as anybody else. But who was the one that was behind the whole thing? The Lord was, because the Lord said, because of your wickedness, your transgressions gonna come back and correct you. And now we all being corrected, but some of us don't want to be corrected. We want to stay mad. We want to stay angry at the whole world, but nobody wants to sit up and say, you know what, man, my fathers was wrong, and I'm wrong too. Lord, please forgive me. Nobody wants to do that. And then once you get that, nobody wants to go out and say, you know what, other nations, I forgive you. Because it wasn't about you in the first place. It was between me and my God. No, what we want to do? We still want to go and watch movies that get us to get hype and get mad and try to rise up and stuff against the oppressor or the colonists and feel good. Because someone else is putting stuff like that out there for you to feel that way. Instead of looking in the book, understanding this movie or this program or this television show is just entertainment. But back to this. Here's an ambassador of Benin. One of the ambassadors that apologized in a letter for his forefathers and their role in slavery.
Filho, com Leo. begging them to forgive us because we sold them. Our forefathers sold their brothers and sisters.
I'm gonna roll it back some because I think it was too low.
I'm just begging them to forgive us because we sold them. Our forefathers sold their brothers and sisters.
What he really needs to be doing is begging forgiveness of the Father through Jesus. Because our brothers and sisters that died at that last ship crash, this site right here that they're looking at, they can't hear them. The dead cannot hear and they know not nothing. So our brothers and sisters that's in Africa, get your mindset out of speaking to the ancestors. Speak to the Father through Christ and ask the Father for forgiveness. Because all of the stuff that's in this Bible, it not just applies to us, it applies to you guys too. I thank God I'm not mad at nobody because the Lord showed me I don't have a right to be. But this is our dirty laundry. Let's keep going. This is a crash site. The remains of one of the last slave ships crashed with people on board, and they died there. They were all chained up. Sad, man. And all of this is of our own fault.
I'm not the person to talk to them. No, may their souls rest in peace, perfect peace. They should forgive us. They should. Yeah, I feel so sad.
It's very sad, man. Very, very sad. Because God called all of this. He said, because you will not keep my commandments, I'm going to turn away from you and watch these curses, all of these evil curses come upon you. And we're being blinded with false doctrine. We're being blinded with, you don't have to care about them curses. You don't have to care about them Lord's commandments. If that's the case, and we're all free in Christ, why are we still in captivity? Why is the world still messed up the way it is then? Because the Lord's commandments do matter. That's why. Let's look at some more. Matter of fact, no, before I keep going, let's read Amos 2, verse 4. Everything you just got finished watching about how our ancestors, Hebrew Israelites in Africa that we're starting to connect with, we also are not finding out that they sold us. They sold us to the Africans who sold us to the Gentiles. They sold us to the Gentiles. They sold us to the Arabs. But this isn't a hate message. I don't want one person to go back and say, oh, you dirty just as well, because we'd have never gotten sold if not one of us was dirty from the begin with. But this dirty laundry is going to get washed out. Amos 2 verse 4. Because the Lord called this. Amos 2 verse 4. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Judah, and for 4 will I not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have despised the law of the Lord and have not kept his commandments, and their lies caused them to err, after the which their fathers have walked. But I will send a fire upon Judah, and it shall devour the places of Jerusalem. And thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they sold the righteous for silver, and the poor for a pair of shoes. And we just witnessed how our brothers and sisters in Africa sold us off. And don't forget how many millions were sold and how many millions died on the ships and in the what they called factories. Verse 7, the pant after the dust of the earth on the head of the poor, and turned aside the way of the meek. And the man and his father will go into the same maid to profane my holy name. And they lay themselves down upon clothes and lay to pledge by every altar. And they drink the wine of the condemned in the house of their God. Our own brothers and sisters sold us off into slavery as well. But again, this is not for us to go and start hating on them. Not at all. Now let's get into a book that I always like to bring up. Yeah, let's go into that instead. If you want to, I'm going to cross that off. Let's get into this book. Oh, somebody wants to hit me up on something, huh? Oh, that was me. I'm sorry. So here we go. What you see right now is a Native American and a, I guess you would call, black soldier. What were these soldiers called? They were called buffalo soldiers. Now, what I'm getting ready to do now is to ride off of our brothers and sisters, or our brothers, our so-called chiefs back in Africa, when a part of Negro land, all the Hebrews that ran from Jerusalem and came to that part of the world, they sold us off too. But even when we got here, we started doing some evil stuff as well. Nobody wants to look at the real part when it comes to this, the buffalo soldier. See, if we was to turn and keep the ways that we were supposed to keep, none of this would be happening. So let's read this. This is out of a book called Black Indians. After the Civil War, U.S. policy. Let me start again. The Buffalo Soldiers. After the Civil War, U.S. policy was brought forcefully home to Native Americans on the bayonets of U.S. infantry and cavalry regiments assigned to the frontier. This was on the Native Americans, not the tribe of Gad. This is the original Native Americans that were here before we started marrying them and integrating and having children with them. For the first time officially, this included black men, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, and the 24th and the 25th Infantry Regiments, U.S. colored troops. There is a painful irony that these intrepid black soldiers took part in a final defeat of Native Americans, the first victims of racism in the Americas, which is true. The Native Americans that were here way before we came were the first victims of racism in the Americas. But take part they did, and proudly, in the last Indian Wars, because their short curly hair was similar to that on the buffalo's neck. Indians called them Buffalo Soldiers, and the name stuck. So the Native Americans were the ones who called us Buffalo Soldiers. The Native Americans were the ones that called us a byword. They moved Indian families and nations from one location to another and rode after those who left reservations to seek some freedom. So wait a minute. You mean to tell me in these days we couldn't become a soldier, but we became one because of the Emancipation Proclamation? Then you mean to tell me we were being used to go out and spy and hunt down the Native Americans? Oh, hold on a second here. They moved Indian families and nations from one location to another and rode after those who left reservations to seek some freedom or merely for forage for food for starving people. From the Canadian border to the Rio Grande, from the St. Louis to the Rockies into California, the Buffalo Soldiers rode up an impressive record. They used Israel as soldiers to help take out the Native Americans. In an age that offered black men few dissent, mainly jobs, military life appealed to those recruits. Ooh, does that sound familiar? Does that still go on today? Oh my goodness. Many had served their country during the Civil War. There is little evidence that these men disagreed with their government's genocidal policies towards Native Americans, and they certainly carried out all the orders. We sitting up here, Jimmy, and just as bad as the people that we want to say are sinners. We want to sit up and say these evil people, but now we turn around and we doing the same thing with them. In 1890, black troopers were summoned to assist the suppression of the last Indian uprising, the Ghost Dance Rebellion. Really a Sioux religious revival and prayer for survival. It managed to terrify local whites. The U.S. Army command ordered in its troops after surrounding 350 Sioux at Wounded Knee. The 7th Cavalry opened up fire on innocent men, women, and children. One of the 50 survivors of the massacre recalled, "We tried to run, but they shot us like we were buffalo." Black troops were not involved in the slaughter, but the 9th Cavalry had been assigned to herding the ghost dancers together. Now, this is not a troop shall overcome thee, or thou shalt overcome a troop. No, this is not Tribe of Gan. This is the Gentiles who are the original Native Americans. But what did the Israelite black troops do? The black troops were involved in the slaughter, were not involved in the slaughter, but the 9th Cavalry had been assigned to herding the ghost dancers together. So they used us like they used those dogs to herd sheep. That's what they did with us. To celebrate their part in the action, a 9th Cavalryman wrote a ballad that ended with lines. Now, I didn't want to read the rest of that, but understand, the Buffalo Soldier was us. And as much as we like to say the white man is evil and did this, we helped the white man. That's where you need to get humble and find out, hey, and understand, you just as bad as them. Oh. We gonna watch something, y'all. Something that happened, I think it was last month. Now, let me say this before I play this. I do agree that these brothers went in to this place to record something that was foul, but I do not agree on how one of the brothers was acting. But the point is, you need to watch this.
Let me, hey. Open it up.
Let's look at our own dirty laundry, people.
Well, there's a lot of young black men being gunned down on the south side of Chicago, don't you think? South and west side. What about property taxes?
Don't touch me.
Oh, wait a minute. Y'all got it going on in this joint.
Now, this is the only thing that I don't approve of, is the way the brothers went in there and this one guy just starts yelling and stuff. No, sit down, record and see what they talking about. Don't just bust in because you found out there's a secret meeting going on between the black pastors and a politician. Go in there humbly. When you bust in, you bust up everything.
God bless everybody. Y'all got it going on, pastors. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. You're going to regret it. Wow, that guy right there. JB, huh? What we think? Hold on.
Oh, I also have to say, if I remember right, there may be some profanity in here. So if you got children watching, you don't want them to hear it, you know, majority of y'all kids done heard y'all cuss anyway, so
all the homies in the street. Wait a minute. Don't touch him. Don't touch him.
I don't want to have nobody.
Whoa. Got some pastors up in here, huh?
Everybody chill. Everybody chill.
Got some pastors up in here.
We want to listen. Let the man say what he got to say.
We want to hear what he got to say.
Now the brother right there in the red, he was going in there the way I'm talking about. Go in there and you know, just be calm, record. But the other brother that's recording right now, he's the one that wants to get wild and ignorant and stuff. But again, what is going on here? A secret meeting between Israelite pastors, when I mean black pastors, but they're all Israelites, but majority of them don't know it or don't want to know, with a politician.
Hey, hold on.
You want to hear what he got to say, JB?
Yeah.
Meeting with these black pastors.
Don't let them front you, Ty. Right. Turn that off.
Wow, it ain't got quiet now. It ain't got quiet now that the young Jason got up in here.
I got a brother standing.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. Hey, man. Hey.
Wow. Hey, don't touch me. You better touch me. Hey, brother. Watch yourself. Brother, you better watch yourself. You better watch yourself. That's the wrong decision, though, bro. That's the wrong decision, Pastor. I'm going to beat that spirit out your ass, Pastor. I'm going to beat that motherfucking spirit out your ass, Pastor. You better watch who you touch. You better watch who you touch. That's a guarantee, motherfucker. Oh, what you talking about? You let that nigga on the field. I guarantee I can tell you all to I'm going to my right hook that motherfucker. I'm going to right hook that motherfucker. Come on, Pastor. Come on, Pastor. I'm going to right hook that motherfucker. Come on, do it, Pastor. Come on, do it, Pastor. Come on, Pastor, do it. I'm going to rock your mouth. Come on, Pastor. Touch me if you want to. Come on, Pastor.
Now, here's the problem I have with this, all right? Even though that the brother went in there acting a little ignorant, as a pastor, why are you jumping up acting ignorant too? That's the problem I got with this. It's kind of letting me know something's going on here that again, the brother shouldn't have came in there talking like that. But there's a secret meeting going on. Normally when politicians meet with pastors or anybody, we see it all on the news. But for some reason, and this something is a campaign that's going on right now. But for some reason, this dude called all these so-called major pastors in the city of Chicago to have a meeting that was never talked about. But somehow these brothers found out about it and went in there. But now the pastors want to fight.
I'm gonna rock your ass, motherfucker. Come on and touch me. Come on and touch me, motherfucker. Come on and touch me. Come on and touch me. Touch me again. Touch me again. You protecting the motherfucker that's oppressing your dumb ass, motherfucker. That's what you doing. You touching the motherfucker that's oppressing your ass, nigga. Let's go. No. Step outside, Pastor.
Hey, son, be cool.
Let's get up out of here, man. I'm gonna sit my ass in here like a taxpaying resident. Now touch me again. Can I get this? See who's sitting right here? I'm sitting over here. Look, man. You gotta get up out of here. You came in on no girls. I'm sitting down as a resident. You're not gonna sit down. You're not gonna deny me sitting down as a resident. None of the motherfucker touch me up in this motherfucker again. Touch me again in this motherfucker. Watch how I go down. I respect. I want to sit down as a resident. I want to talk to the candidate that's running for governor to stand up for the North.
Now I'm gonna stop it there because the person that they came to bust in on, I don't want to show his face. Now I don't want people to know who it is. If you already know who it is, then fine. But like I said before, let's go to Zechariah 11. Like I said before, usually every time there's some type of meeting with a politician and anybody that has some type of pull in the city of Chicago, the news is normally there. It's always, they call the news and they tell them, we are giving a press conference over here. We're meeting with these Catholic priests over here. But for some reason, this was not publicized. Zechariah 11, verse 4. Thus saith the Lord my God, feed the flock of the slaughter, whose possessors slay them, and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not. Their own shepherds pity them not. There are so many so-called pastors who do deals with politicians without no one knowing, get paid very well. And they still go out here, and I'm talking about the pastors, not the politicians. And they go out here and they teach false doctrine and they keep the children of God in sin while the people that they're making deals with continue to benefit and make money off of Israel. Let me tell you how much money that everyone made off of Israel last weekend. Your own oppressors made, what was it, 28 million in 3 days? Or was it 2 days? Do you understand how much money and power you do have, but that's never going to come together? But a lot of these pastors understand that. And as long as they can keep you asleep and keep you sinning, so another nation can make money off of you, they get paid from the other nation. That is the dirty laundry when it comes to Israel. Not just the fact that our ancestors back in Africa, who were Hebrews, who ran from Jerusalem into the west coast of Africa, sold us off as slaves. But now we have pastors here who pity us not, who continue to sell you over to the powers that be for money. Isaiah 56, verse 10. His watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark, sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. Yea, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. So it done got passed down to our pastors. Our so-called chiefs back in Africa, they were greedy dogs and sold us off to the Hamites, to the Gentiles, to the Ishmaelites. And then the ones that got sold off, we get over here. We used to be pimping on the streets. Now we pimping in the pulpits. Yea, they are greedy dogs which can never have enough, and they are shepherds that cannot understand. They all look towards their own way, for everyone his gain, for his own gain. That's what you call sellouts. From his quarter, Come ye, they say, I will bring wine, and we will fill ourselves with strong drink. And tomorrow shall be as this day, and much more abundant. This is why you have, now I'm not saying all pastors, but the majority of them, and I don't care what day they worship on. If they're not keeping the law and commandments of God and they're not being righteous, they are greedy dogs as well. The same thing. If they're not teaching you what this says right here, Ecclesiastes 12:13, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man, then they're a false prophet. And I don't care who they are. Because that's what has gotten us into trouble as a nation of people. And if we would have done these things, we would not be in the situation that we are in now. All this dirty laundry wouldn't be happening. Let's go to 2 Peter 2. It's going to be the last scripts. 2 Peter 2 verse 1. But there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privately shall bring damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. When the Lord says fear him and keep his commandments, the way of truth, it is evil spoken of when they say you don't have to keep them commandments of God no more. Your pastors are trying to keep you in bondage, not set you free. You don't keep the commandments, you're under the curses. You're under bondage. And other people are going to make merchandise. I don't went ahead of myself. Let's keep on reading. And through their covetousness shall they with vain words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. How are they making a merchandise of you? Because the pulpits is the new game. It's been game for a long time, but there was a lot of brothers that was into some other things. It's like, man, we gonna get into this drug game, man. We gonna get in this pimping game, man. Some of the early pastors knew, man, I can make a lot of money off these Hebrews. And now today, everybody doing it. That's why the majority of all those black pastors was sitting there with that politician. Their pastors, their shepherds, pity them not. Skip down to verse 10. But chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanliness and despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed, they are not afraid to speak evil of dignities. Let's run down because I see time running out. Let's go to verse 17. These are well without water, clouds that are carried with a tempest, to whom the mist of the darkness is reserved forever. What is a well without water? It ain't worth nothing. If you are thirsty for knowledge, if you are thirsty and you go to your pastor and he's a well without water, he can't give you no water. Verse 18. For they speak great swelling words of vanity to allure through the lust of the flesh. So they're going to say all these great, big, gigantic words that'll make you be like, yeah, he got the spirit in him. Look how he talks. Look how he speaks. And it's all because of the lust of your flesh. They allure through the lust of the flesh. If I stick with this dude, I'm going to be blessed. Through much wantonness, those that were clean escape from men, from them who live in error. While they promise you liberty, they themselves are the servants of corruption. While they're promising you going to be free in Christ. You free. You do whatever you want to. What does it say? They themselves are the servants of corruption. For of whom a man is overcome, of the same is he brought in the bondage. For if after they had escaped the pollutions of the world through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled therein and overcome. And the latter end is worse with them than the beginning. For it had been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness, talking about these pastors, then after they have known it, to turn from the holy commandment delivered unto them. But it has happened to them according to the true proverb, the dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the soul that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. That's our dirty laundry. That is our dirty laundry. The signs of Israel, a bunch of dirty laundry. And what we need to be doing is repenting instead of trying to be angry at everybody else. Because the Lord is looking like, what you got? What you mad about? You ain't got no right to get mad. From the beginning, you sold your brother Joseph to the Ishmaelites. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the book that I could show that airs out Israel's dirty laundry, but I just chose to use some modern things, some things that are being mistaught. And one of the main things is when we were sent away on slave ships, as it says in the curses, that it was just the African Hamites that did it. It wasn't just the African Hamites that did it. Our own brothers did it too. When we ran past the Africans into Negro land, which is the west coast and the south of Africa, the people we elected as chiefs, maybe kings, sold us off too, so they wouldn't get sold themselves. The same thing. Matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, hold on. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should have put this in. And then I'm going to definitely get off. So y'all bear with me. If I remember right, I believe that was Jeremiah 27. Let's all go to Jeremiah 27. I believe that was Jeremiah 27. If not, no, 29. Right, 29 I think it was. I just don't remember where in 29. Let's start at we'll probably run into it. And then I'm gonna definitely get off here. So I hope we run into it, because I do remember reading it in here. Jeremiah 29, let's start at verse 4. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem to Babylon. So he's speaking to he's letting us all know he's the one that always makes us be carried away into slavery, period. Build ye houses and dwell in them, and plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take ye wives of your sons and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters. Oh, I remember where it is. I think it's verse 14, verse 12, I think. It's 14. Let's go to verse 12. Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you. And ye shall seek me and find me when ye shall search for me with all your heart. And I will be found of you, thus saith the Lord, and I will turn. Ooh, this ain't it. You're captives to captivity. I will gather you from all the nations, from all the places whither I have driven you, saith the Lord. And I will bring you again into the place where he caused you to be carried away captive. Ooh, this isn't it. Oh, it just came to me. I know it's in here, but it's 10 o'clock. But basically, it's in this chapter where the Lord talks about the ones that when he carried off Israel, the ones that didn't get carried off, he put upon plagues on them. He made it just as bad. Okay, you sold your people off, but I'm going to put plagues on you. Terrible plagues. And when I find it, next time I do a lesson on Israel, I will definitely have it in here. But I do believe it's in Jeremiah 29. But again, the Lord does say, hey, just because you wasn't sold off as slave does not mean the rest of these curses are going to not happen to you. And when we look at a lot of stuff that happened in Africa, plagues, drought, starvation, the Lord, he ain't changed at all. So I'm going to get off here so I get ready for class. I'm glad you guys tuned in. I did see on Facebook people talking about they were buffering. I was buffering a lot. This is why I'm saying get you an account on YouTube, get you an account on Periscope, and come watch me live on there. Either one, because Facebook, for some reason, like I say, all week, I could be not saying nothing, but for some reason, when I start doing this, all of a sudden it's buffering, it's messing up. It's like, I've looked back at some of my other videos and I can see the same spot. As soon as we getting good to something, it messes up. So for everybody on Facebook, I would advise you to go create an account on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the what is it, the blue bell or the gray bell? I don't know. So you get notified every time I go live. Same thing on Periscope. Create an account on Periscope. You can watch me live on there because I never see any problems out of those two. But on Facebook, I'm always having problems. So I thank y'all for watching. Please share the video. I hope that someone got a blessing and someone got humbled to the word of the Lord, and can teach humbly and in meekness to help save those who want to be saved, not just from Israel, but from the other nations too. So all souls can receive salvation, as saith the Lord. Okay. So all praises to the God of Israel, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All glory to the Father. In the name of Jesus, happy Sabbath.